50% new tariff on Brazil. Brazil had a $6.8 billion surplus last year. In fact, the U.S. hasn't had a trade deficit with Brazil since 2007. I mean, almost 2 decades. So why are we putting a punishing 50% tariff on Brazil?
Well, bottom line is the president has been very frustrated with negotiations with Brazil and also with the actions of Brazil. In the end, though, we're trying to put America first. I think that a lot of people, when I'm talking to negotiators from other countries, at some point they'll say, what did we do wrong? And what I'm trying to get, the message we're all trying to get across is this is about America getting itself ready for the golden age by getting our house in order, by getting our tariff and trade policy and tax policy exactly where it needs to be for a golden age.
I don't understand how you're saying it's about America, because the president has made it quite clear that what he's upset about is how the Brazilian Supreme Court has handled the criminal case involving former President Bolsonaro.
I'm agreeing with you. What I'm saying is that what I've been saying with most countries was that it's really about us getting the tariffs in order. And I think that this tariff for Brazil is a lot higher because of the president's frustration with Bolsonaro.
We have some news right now. Donald Trump has imposed 50% tariffs on Brazil. Why? Because he's upset that Brazil is going after its former president, Jair Bolsonaro, for inciting an insurrection. Now, these 50% tariffs will go into effect on August 6th. They exclude a number of things like aircraft parts and orange juice, but what they don't exclude is coffee, and Brazil is one of the largest exporters of coffee to the United States of America, which means your coffee prices are about to skyrocket.
President Trump has pledged a 50% tariff on all Brazilian imports, including coffee and orange juice. If it goes into effect on August 1st, industry experts say prices could rise for both consumers and suppliers. Now, Brazil is the top supplier of orange juice to the U.S. and one of the largest coffee exporters globally. With current droughts hurting harvests, the industry is already under pressure. The average price of a pound of coffee beans in May was $7.93, up from $5.99 last year, and analysts predict a further 25-cent increase per cup, though it may take months to kick in.
I didn't vote for this. Yes, you fucking did. They ran on this shit. You knew it was happening, you just didn't think it was gonna happen to you, babe.
I'm making this video because I voted for Trump, and a lot of my followers are Trump supporters. And I fully expect that I will probably lose a lot of friends and followers because of this opinion. First of all, if we are friends and you can't see past politics to continue being my friend, I just want to say I don't hold any ill will towards you. I totally understand if you feel the need to unfollow me, block me, and not be my friend anymore. I respect it completely. I just don't think we have the same Donald Trump that we had circa 2016 to 2020. This is not the same man. Somewhere along the way, he lost his way.
Hello guys, now welcome back again to this platform. Now MAGA supporters are in it again, and Mr. Donald just signed 50% tariff on coffee that comes from Brazil. And one thing that you need to discover is that United States imports 35, or I would say 35% of coffee used in America comes from Brazil. And so you get to wonder what will happen to Americans. I want you to see these reactions of these fellow Americans, talking about this, and I'll be here. I'll be reacting on it, so make sure that you watch the very end. And do subscribe, like our videos, and share our content. We're going to greatly appreciate. For now, let's jump in and see what we have.
Your coffee, it's gonna become 50% more expensive than what you're paying right now. And the reason behind it is because the president signed today into law 50% tariff against Brazil. And guess where the coffee's coming from? 35% of the coffee is being imported from Brazil. That is what we are importing. The beef, there is a 50% tariff against the beef. That means all those frozen burgers that we are bringing in and the frozen lamb and all that, it's gonna have 50% tariff. The steel is at 50%, but then who cares about the steel? I mean, it's not like we use it every day. But the good news is the orange juice, it is exempt from the tariff. Don't ask me why, we don't know. The United States does import a lot of orange juice from Brazil, but I don't know why that was. I guess because everybody drinks it in the morning and it's more like, you know, it's supposed to be like your bread, your butter kind of type of food. So that's where we are dealing with today. So, and that is going to take effect on August 1st. So all this cargo that it's already on the water is going to get hit by 50% as soon as it arrives into the United States. There's nothing you can do about it. You can't deviate from paying the duties and the tariff. The only way to go around it is to reroute your shipments to Mexico or to Canada until you find a solution, or to put it in a specific type of warehouse until you figure out what to do. Most of our customers today were really worried about what they're going to do with the product that is coming in here. Their customers are not they're not wanting to pay the 50% tariff. They're basically saying it's their problem as exporters, and from Brazil, I mean. So now this is the whole entire issue. I have one customer, he has about 4 containers on the water, and guess what? His customer just canceled the entire order. So that's the news of the day. I guess it's another day in logistics. So yep, that's what we're going to talk about it for the entire week. Hopefully we can help these people out and see what we can do with it. So cheers.
We have big news right now. Your coffee prices are about to skyrocket in the United States of America because of one thing: Donald Trump's tariffs on Brazil. He announced earlier this week 50% tariffs on Brazil, but we're learning more about the impacts of these tariffs specifically on the coffee sector. If you didn't know, Brazil imports more green coffee beans than any other country in the world to the United States, or rather exports, sorry. In addition, Brazil's coffee beans account for about a third of the coffee supply coming into the United States. That's according to Reuters. Because of that, 50% tariffs will make it very difficult for Brazilian exports to come in. It will make it impossible at the current price, but it'll make it very difficult just generally, placing a strain on the coffee supply coming into the United States, which means that starting on August 1st, coffee prices across the country will go up. And it'll impact not just the Brazilian coffee that's coming in, but also coffee from other countries across South America. So we're going to see what happens next. Spread the word. I'll have a full breakdown of this and more on my Substack, linked in bio, so subscribe for free. And as always, follow along for more.
Friends, we do have some extreme breaking news. Trump just slapped a 50% tariff on Brazil. So does that mean coffee prices will explode? So this is the 50% tariff on Brazilian goods effective August. And coffee is not excluded. As you know, Brazil is a huge supplier of U.S. coffee. Experts already warn that prices are already skyrocketing. Some coffee companies say their exposure is limited, but overall inflation and supply chain scrambles are already in motion. Now, why is he doing this, you may ask? He says it's about Brazil getting too cozy with China. As you guys know, Brazil joined BRICS Plus, signed a bunch of commodity deals with Beijing, and they've already announced they're ditching the US dollar. Trump says Brazil is undermining US markets and hurting American farmers by flooding us with cheap imports. Not just coffee, but beef, soy, and more, he says. But here's the twist: the US doesn't even grow coffee in large amounts. This is more about political messaging, rather than protecting American coffee. Trump's also using this as a way to fire up his own base, saying it's a part of America's first plan. Just like the China trade war we've all been seeing, now it's Brazil's turn. Bottom line, your coffee is definitely about to cost more. This is real, and it starts in August.
Brazil's president told Trump off. Now Trump is punishing him by making Americans pay higher prices. Trump enacted a 50% tariff on all Brazilian products, even though the U.S. has a trade surplus with Brazil, and even though Brazil grows over a third of America's coffee and 2/3 of its orange juice. And there's more about Trump and tariffs at culturalperspective.com. So follow along here. Trump and the world are a cultural mismatch. The world thinks in partnerships and Trump thinks in punishments. But because Trump can't punish other countries, he doesn't have control over them, he punishes Americans, in this case with higher prices. But it has minimal effect on Brazil because only 16% of Brazilian coffee goes to the United States. But the United States imports 35% of its coffee from Brazil. It's even worse with orange juice because the United States imports 65% of its orange juice from Brazil. Now, Brazil is more dependent on the United States with orange juice because it exports about 35% of its crop to the US. Still, the balance is in favor of Brazil, and it's not like there aren't high tariffs on other countries that are exporting orange juice and coffee to the United States. So what will happen? is happening, countries will stop exporting to the United States, prices will rise because the supply is less, and on top of already higher prices from the tariffs. How does this punish Brazil? I have no idea, and neither does Trump.
I have some bad news for you. Trump's 50% tariffs on Brazil are going to make your coffee more expensive. And coffee inflation has already been in the double digits this year. That's because Brazil is the United States' largest coffee supplier. The US could find other sources, but that will take time Americans aren't willing to give. People want their coffee right now. What's worse, this goes into effect as soon as August 1st, unless Trump makes another taco U-turn. But this time, it's not about trade, it's about punishment, and that's according to Trump himself. Here's the truth. The US has a surplus with Brazil. By Liberation Day logic, Brazil should be the one imposing a tax. If you want more charts like these, sign up for John Author's free newsletter at the link in our bio.
Hi, I'm Emily. I'm a coffee importer, and I want to take a moment to tell you a little bit about how the Brazil tariffs are going to impact coffee imports. So first, just real quick, a little background. I've been in importing for about 7 years and coffee for about 15. Let's get into Brazil. So August 1st, new tariffs were announced, and it's pretty confusing. So I wanted to tell you just really quickly how the tariffs are going to work when coffee comes into the United States. Brazil produces 30% of the coffee that the United States imports. It's not a supply chain that can be replaced. The United States consumes 3.6 billion pounds of coffee each year, and we can only produce 20 million pounds of coffee. So that's a really big gap that we have to fill. Brazil is also a really unique country in that Brazil cost of production of coffee is really low because of unique climate and topography. It allows coffee to be mechanically processed or mechanically harvested, and so it's pretty inexpensive to grow and harvest coffee in Brazil. For that reason, it is the base of most things. Any blend that you see, any espresso that gets used, it's usually based on Brazil. So when we're bringing coffee in from Brazil, here's how it's going to work. These are tariffs. There is not a single penny that's going to be paid by the exporting country. I don't care what the government says, not a penny will be paid by the exporting country. The importer in the United States is going to bring that container of coffee, so that box of coffee over from Brazil. It's going to go to the port, at which point it's going to go through customs. At the point that it goes through customs, it's going to be like we have to file customs paperwork, and we have to identify we have a customs broker who identifies all of the different fees and regulations that are applicable to this coffee. So Brazilian coffee is going to be hit by the code 9903.01.77. That's a 40% tariff that comes from the recent executive order that was put forward about a month ago. And it's also going to be hit by 9903.02.09, which is the 10% tariff that was announced last night. All of the tariff codes stack, so that comes out to being a 50% tariff. And that's 50% based on whatever the value was labeled in the customs paperwork. So if it gets labeled that the value of that a pound of Brazilian coffee is $4, then it's going to be an additional $2 in tariff. That fee has to be paid up front by the importer before customs will release the coffee. So it's not like we can sell it and then take that money and use it to pay for the tariff. Like you would, if you were roasting coffee, right? You could sell it and then you could pay your bill, and that's kind of how things work. It doesn't work that way with tariffs. We need to pay that up front before we can release the coffee. And if we don't pay it, it's going to accumulate additional fees for being held and stored. So it has to get paid. because these tariffs have been so unpredictable, nobody's got cash laying around, and we certainly don't have an extra 40, 60. I think on our last container of Brazil, we would be looking at like $100,000 in tariff costs if that comes through. So nobody's got that laying around, nobody. So you have to go to a bank and get that money financed. So additionally, on top of paying the 50% tariffs, you're also going to be paying 12% interest, I don't know, 6% interest, whatever. You're going to be paying interest on that money. So that is an additional cost that we have to be paying on top of the tariff rate. So banks are making a lot of money off of this because everybody's got to go out and get financing. And then all of that money is going to the US government. To give you a little bit of perspective, when we import coffee and we sell it, we make a 10% margin. That means that with every single coffee we bring in, right now the federal government makes more money than we do on the products that we sell. So they're making bank off of us. And where's that money going? It's going to the new budget that was just authorized and voted on and approved. If you pay attention, there are 10 years of tariff rates that are added into that budget, which means they are not going to be reducing tariff rates. They're not dealing. The only negotiation that's happening is with the American people to try to negotiate our money out from our pockets. So the government's taking the money. You're not getting it as a rebate check. You're not going to get it to pay down debt. It has already been allocated in the budget to pay for the tax cuts, to pay for the increase in spending to ICE. That's where it's going for. It's going for all of these different things, but it's not coming back to you. So when we say tariffs are a tax, this is what we're talking about. Instead of tax income in the budget, they use tariff income. Every single penny of it's coming from the American consumer. We've got the receipts to back it up. And that's how tariffs work. That's how Brazil's going to work until coffee either gets exempted or until coffee, until these tariffs, until somebody comes to their senses and these tariffs get pulled back. That's it. If you have questions, drop them in the comments. I'll try to answer them.
President Trump has pledged a 50% tariff on all Brazilian imports, including coffee and orange juice. If it goes into effect on August 1st, industry experts say prices could rise for both consumers and suppliers. Now, Brazil is the top supplier of orange juice to the US and one of the largest coffee exporters globally. With current droughts hurting harvests, the industry is already under pressure. The average price of a pound of coffee beans in May was $7.93, up from $5.99 last year, and analysts predict a further 25-cent increase per cup, though it may take months to kick in. Quality could also drop. Brazil's beans are considered higher grade than those from other regions like Vietnam, which may struggle to meet the growing demand of America's coffee needs. Brazil also supplies 90% of fresh OJ and 55% of frozen orange juice to the US, and without a trade deal, both countries could feel the squeeze. But what do you think? Are these tariffs going to hurt America's breakfast routine, or are they going to strengthen our economy? Let us know in the comments and follow us here for more.
We have some news right now. Donald Trump has imposed 50% tariffs on Brazil. Why? Because he's upset that Brazil is going after its former president, Jair Bolsonaro, for inciting an insurrection. They exclude a number of things like aircraft parts and orange juice, but what they don't exclude is coffee. And Brazil is one of the largest exporters of coffee to the United States of America, which means your coffee prices are about to skyrocket. And they're going to skyrocket on August 6th as tariffs jack up prices of Brazilian coffee coming into the United States. And honestly, a 50% tariff would make it nearly impossible for some Brazilian exporters to even bring coffee into the United States, just given the complete cost of the entire process of getting it to the United States of America. Now, it's not the worst case scenario, as Brazil's finance minister says, because it excludes a number of things like orange juice, nuts, aircraft parts, and more. But at least coffee, that price is going to go up fast. So spread the word and follow along step to date on all the news you need to know about. More to come soon.
Hello guys, now welcome back again. And watching Americans reacting to it, and also MAGA supporters reacting to it. The first visceral feeling here you see is betrayal, because many of the people on camera helped elect the president, and because they wanted their price of living stabilized, and their jobs protected, and that sense of the system would work for them. And in a flash they see a decision that makes commodity they buy every day more expensive than they thought. Now this makes it harder for them to get to understand, did we really vote for this government, or there's someone else running the government that we put in place? Because our government never stood for this. Our government talked about a very different thing than what is happening right now. So I can see that sense of people feeling that they are betrayed. And people talked about this. Black people talked about this. Kamala Harris talked about this and told them, I want you to come to my government. I want you, to stand for Americans and not America first. Sometimes they're told America first and they think it's Americans first. They fail to understand that if it means America first, then it means policies that make America be that state that it used to be, and have that strength and power. They will do anything, even if it means hurting the very citizens that make up that country. So this is one thing that they failed, to discover, the difference between making America great and making Americans great. It begins from there. First, making Americans great so that Americans may make America as a state great. So this is one of the difference they never discovered. Now the anger is not purely emotional, and you can really see it. It's also a reaction to a mismatch between promise and outcome, because what they were promised, it's totally the difference of what they are getting right now. And the tariffs are often sold as tools to protect domestic workers and industry. But when the protection is blunt, just think of a flat 50% tariff on important imports. That immediate and visible effect is higher prices at checkout, not instant wage gains. And voters notice that faster than they notice long-term industrial shifts. That aftermath hits differently, and I guess you all know how it tests. Economically, the mechanics are straightforward. A 50% tariff increases the landed cost of Brazilian coffee for US importers and roasters. So importers either eat the cost, which crashes margins, or even pass it along to roasters and ultimately to consumers. And guess who is going to suffer here? That common consumer. For commodities with tight margins, think many roasters and independent caves that squeeze, I would say it is very immediate. And I think analysis of the move warned of these trade-offs and the second round effects, in the supply chain. So Brazil, one thing that you need to note here, Brazil isn't a marginal player here. It supplies a very large share of the beans that US roasters rely on. And it's measured in millions of 60 kg bags annually. So that scale means the tariff isn't minor administrative tweak, it's a market shock, and it's also a shock to Americans because they never thought of this would happen. They really believed in this government, especially MAGA supporters. That's why you can see some of them do, you do see them here crying a lot, saying that things are not they're not the way they expected, and they really regret, bringing this government to place. They think, they really hope they had been given a second chance, to at least make a difference, to at least, bring in a different government. But it's so too late for them right now. It's hurting them, it is hurting the markets, it is hurting their businesses. Look at, even some of them are going bankrupt. Some of them, their produce is rotting in the fields, no one to work on them. The government that they put in place has chased away the workers. And so you also get to ask yourself the same question that I did ask here. Was it really about making America great, or it was the opposite of that? Maybe that's a question that I would love you to answer in the comment section. Please do share your thoughts concerning it in the comment section, and share your views, like our videos, share our content, and also subscribe to the channel if you've not yet subscribed. For now, I bring it to a close, hoping to see you in my next video. Goodbye.